Hey, good morning, guys. It's Mr. Marks. Just check in with you. I want to make sure I go over this assignment with you so you guys have access to check answers and go through things and you can rewind. That's why instead of me going through it live, I figure, hey, I'll record this so if you need me to stop and go slow, and if anybody's having trouble with their internet, you guys just go back and review. So let's look at our assignment today, the influences of enlightenment on American Declaration of Independence. So I figured today I'd give you my notes and then we'll fill in some stuff and we can have some discussion. So make sure you do your attendance today. You check in, okay? Answer your question for today online, and then there's a little um, formative check you have to do, a little Google form quiz at the end of class as well. So we're going to talk about the purpose of the Declaration of Independence today. We're going to talk about what unalienable rights are, explain that term, and then what consent of the people means in the Declaration, as well as some other key terms like the social contract and popular sovereignty. So, some of the influences and the purpose of the Declaration came from some great thinkers in this time period leading up to that. Um, a lot of the writers of the Declaration of Independence were influenced greatly by the thinkers of the Enlightenment. You guys learned about that a lot last year. One being John Locke. Okay. So, John Locke talked a lot about some big things like natural rights. Okay. Natural rights, boom, right there. The rights to seek life, liberty, and property. Those are your natural rights you're born with. Now, obviously, we kind of changed that a little bit, didn't we? We're going to add the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that idea of the pursuit of happiness is actually going to come from um, Jean Jacques Rousseau. He's actually going to talk about the idea about um, people having an individual will and equality and all kinds of stuff from him. All right. So we're actually going to steal some of his ideas too. Um, but some pretty cool ideas here as well. Now, Locke is also going to have the idea of how the government represents a social contract between the ruler and his people. Okay. Now, what does that mean? A social contract is an agreement between the government and its people. So the government agrees to do a couple of things. Number one, they agree that they are going to protect the people's natural rights. Okay. All right. But what happens if they don't do that? If they don't protect our natural rights, they don't protect our life, liberty, or property, then this is the key thing. Okay. All right. We talked about if the government of the people does not protect our natural rights, the people have the right to overthrow that government. Now, what that means, to overthrow the government, does not mean they have to always have a revolution. They might change the government some way. Now, there's ways we change the government every day. We vote. Okay, we put people in office. We make new laws. Okay, those are all different ways we change the government. But in some cases, some extreme cases, like in the Declaration of Independence, we literally change our government. We break away. We declare our independence from Great Britain. So that was the purpose. We were upset with the government of Great Britain. We felt like we weren't being represented. They violated the social contract. Okay. And so the idea that John Locke, who's probably the most influential of all the Enlightenment thinkers, he believes that all the power comes from the consent of the people. Okay. That means the people give their permission. Okay. The same thing can be said from Jean Jacques Rousseau. Now, this is the idea of the general will of society. This is the idea we talked about popular sovereignty. Okay. Oop. It's the popular will. Okay. And like sometimes we give up, we give up our freedom in exchange for the common good. That's the exact same thing, idea of this social contract that we have, this agreement that we make with the government. Okay. And that is that social contract. That's that agreement that we have. And the government then has this contract where they're going to create um, They're going to create a system of government that is fair. Okay, that they're going to check each other. They're going to make sure that they're going to prevent one key term here we see is the term tyranny. Tyranny means when you have an all powerful government that can abuse your rights. Okay, so these are very influential people. They were all writers of the Enlightenment time period, which is a big time period from the 1600s to the 1700s. And you learned a lot about those guys last year in world history. Okay, so it says define each of the following and find a quote in the Declaration. I spelled declaration wrong. I'll have to fix that. Okay. um, in there. So it says so the first example is popular sovereignty. So that's the will of the people. The people have the power. Okay, governments are instituted among men. Okay, so what you do is you're going to find a quote from the transcript. You're going to define it, then find a quote. So let's work on this together a little bit. So um, look for examples of unalienable rights, or find a definition on unalienable rights or natural rights. Find the definition of consent of the governed, and find the definition of social contract. And then we're going to read the preamble of the Constitution. And then you want to put an example of a quote of unalienable rights, or a quote of consent of the governed, or a quote about the social contract in here. It could be just one line or one little blurb. Okay. I'll let you pause and I'll let you work on that right now. Okay. Then we'll come back and we'll go over that. Okay. See you in a couple minutes. All right, I'm back. All right, so hopefully we got some good answers down there. So let's talk about some things we could find. So obviously, popular sovereignty, anything they mention about the people, okay, which you could argue is the same thing as consent of the governed, very similar. But let's look at unalienable rights. So unalienable rights are rights that you were born with, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And there's some good quotes in here with that. So if we're looking at some things in here on the Declaration. Um, So it talks about anything in here. When in the course of human events becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connect them with another and assume on the nature of power on earth and separate equal station, the laws of nature's God entitles them. Okay, when they mention the laws of nature and nature's God entitled to them, those are natural rights. Those are God-given laws, God-given rights. Okay? Again, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Boom. Those are natural rights again. They are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. There they go again. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now this is where we don't add property in there, we actually add pursuit of happiness. That makes sense? Okay. So you could use any of those examples. You could use any of those examples for unalienable rights. Okay. Now we want to look for ideas about the consent of the governor of the people. Well, it says here to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That was not a good one. Get the eraser out on that one. Okay, sorry. We'll stick to the pen. Okay, the consent of the governed. Okay, when people give their consent, it means they give their permission. So the permission of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it's the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Okay, so when the government becomes destructive, that means when the government violates their agreement. So governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. There's your quote you would put in for that one. But then here's where you get the social contract. When any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it's the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. And institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as they shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Okay? So when we look at unalienable rights, those are life, liberty, and property. But in this case, where we found them in here, we added the pursuit of happiness. The consent of the governed means the permission of the people. And we talked about here, he says that they're deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That just means the people have the power. That's the biggest thing to put in that one. People have the power. And the social contract, the key thing there is whenever any form, this is the biggest part for that one, for number 4. Okay, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it's the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute new government. Okay? All right. So the last thing I need you guys to do a little research. When, where, and why was the Declaration of Independence written? Pretty simple. Who was the main author of the Declaration? What state was he from? So you're gonna do a little research. What year did the war between Great Britain and the American colonies begin? Okay, pretty simple. I'll give you a hint. Look up Bunker Hill and Lexington and Concord. When was Lexington and Concord fought? And what was the penalty for the 56 men who ended up signing this document? Okay, because this document, the Declaration, is literally the greatest breakup letter in the whole wide world. It's the United States breaking up from Great Britain, saying why we want to leave. All righty. Okay, so make sure you guys answer those four questions there at the bottom. Okay, and then make sure you take the Declaration of Independence formative check, and you'll be done for the day. Okay? Any questions, just let me know. Have a great day, okay? We'll see you guys.